The present video details how to carry out calculations with the Handy Calculations tool. Before watching this video, it is better to have first watched the video Support Features in Calculation Pages. Let's go on a calculation page with the Handy Calculations button. You can see that there are two tables. The left one is for entering the input parameters, and the right one corresponds to the output parameters. It is called the two tables format. The user has to define the input values and their units respectively in the value and unit columns of the input table. The output units have also to be defined in the unit column of the output table. Basically, once the inputs are entered, the calculation is processed by clicking on the table button, and the results are displayed in the output table. Depending on the page, this button is alternatively named Calculate. In some pages, it is possible to display the results in a graphic for better readability. It is the case of the present page calculating a Gaussian beam after propagation through a paraxial system. You can see in the graphic the incident and emerging beams, as well as the input parameters and the output values, which are here the waist, radius and position of the emerging beam. This calculation mode, where all input parameters are fixed, is called the fixed mode. It is possible to vary an input parameter, all the others being fixed. This is the varying mode. The varying input parameter is selected in the variable column of the input table. Its minimum and maximum values are defined respectively in the corresponding min and max cells. The number of variable values is entered in the corresponding steps cell. The result can be either displayed in a table by clicking on the Table V button, or in curves by clicking on the Curve V button. After clicking on the Table V button, the result table is broken down into 3 columns for each output parameter. The first column corresponds to an error code, which is 0 if the calculation could be processed and 1 otherwise. The second column corresponds to the variable input values, and the third one to the calculated values. The values of the fixed input parameters are displayed on the top of the table. After clicking on the Curve V button, as many curves as output parameters are displayed. In each curve, the abscissa corresponds to the variable input and the ordinate to the considered output parameter. The values of the fixed input parameters are displayed on the top of the curve. If points of the curve are missing, it means that the calculation for the corresponding variable input values are not possible. The two-table format doesn't apply to all the calculation pages. Indeed, in some pages, only one table is displayed, like in the present one. That is the single table format. Basically, this table allows to define the input parameters, to choose an output parameter, and to display the result. You can see that by default, one cell of the table is empty. It corresponds to the parameter to be calculated with all other parameters as input. If I empty another value cell, the corresponding parameter will be calculated with all other parameters as input. This format makes it possible to group the calculations and therefore to limit the number of pages. Other than that, the procedures for entering input values and calculating are the same as for the two tables format. For instance, You can see that in the present page, it is possible to display the result in a graphic as shown now. Sorry. It is also possible to vary a parameter and display the result in a table or in a curve. The presentation is finished. Thank you for your attention.